So the match between the Springboks and Italy has just come to a close, 45 points to nil in favour of South Africa, and it was quite the eventful 80 minutes of rugby. We saw new tactics that other sides had not used before. We saw some dominance from the Boks, as well as a few controversial moments in that matchup too. And in this review, we'll be looking through at them, as well as who were the key players for both of these sides. So we will jump straight into it. First off, we've got to talk about that kickoff. Straight away, the Springboks deciding that they wanted a scrum. So purposely not kicking at the 10 metres so that they could have it on the halfway line. Now, what wasn't mentioned at the time is the fact that Andre Esterhuizen was actually about 3 metres in front of Manie Libbok, so it could have been a penalty rather than a scrum, but instead the scrum went down and a free kick being awarded to the Italians. Not quite the start to the match that South Africa were after, but that was not the only slightly different tactic we saw throughout this game from the Boks. We saw the line-out lift in the middle of play, both times leading to a try, one for Kane Moody, and then also one for Malcolm Marx. We saw 2 tries for Edouard van der Merwe in this match. He played extremely well and got himself the Man of the Match award for this contest. Grant Williams also having a phenomenal game from the 9 jersey. He did score the first try of the contest for South Africa, so looking like he's picking up exactly where he left off before he did have that injury that's left him out for quite some time. But Rassie, there was obviously the game plan, which was to play a few mind games, of course, but a few different tactics that we might see sprinkled in throughout the Springbok season. And one thing's for sure, they are effective when they pay off. I'm not sure how often we're going to see them go to that lift in the middle of the field, but both times up against Italy, they got themselves penalty advantages for that play. So I would absolutely love to see whether or not they use it up against the Australians, New Zealand, Argentina in that rugby championship, perhaps in the November internationals too, or whether it was just an experimentation that they were willing to use up against an Italian side that they felt confident that they would be able to beat. Another big moment that came from this game, Jesper Wiese, the red card for a headbutt on Fischetti. Now, it was initially started by the Italian loose head prop, but in that scenario, when there's a bit of a jersey grab and a little bit of push and shove, you can't headbutt a bloke. And that is what Jesper Wiese did. Yes, he didn't connect with him as cleanly as he probably wanted to, but he did still hit him on the nose. So the big question mark for Jesper Wiese is, what is the suspension length going to be? He has already had a pretty poor disciplinary record in the past, so I don't see them letting him off with a little bit of a lighter sentence. Like, this could be 4 to 6 weeks that we see Jesper Wiese out. If it's 4 weeks, it means that he will miss the first match up against the All Blacks at Eden Park. If it is 6, it means that he misses both of those games and only can play one of the Rugby Championship. It was not the only card that we saw throughout this game. We saw multiple for South Africa, as well as multiple in the end for the Italians. So it was a pretty scrappy game overall. But one thing that was consistent across the game is no matter how many players were taken off the field, South Africa still held control of this contest, having a little bit more possession, a bit more territory, a whole heap more running meters. They were beating defenders for fun as well. So even though there were many issues out there on the field, they still didn't look like being beaten by this Italy team, who certainly didn't have that same level of aggression and passion as we saw the week prior, although there was still that patch in the second half where they were a lot stronger. South Africa in the end getting 21 points throughout the second half compared to the 24 that they did get in the first. That was also with the last minute try from Jan-Hendrik Wessels. Did manage to just keep that ball in the field of play and on the try line before going out. But moving on to players who maybe didn't quite have the best performance, I will say it, Willie le Roux. 100th test match, massive congratulations to him for getting this far in his Springbok journey. He becomes one of a very small few who have reached that centurion mark in the green and gold. He didn't have his best game here. Unfortunately, I thought that Manie Libbok, with the exception of a couple early kicks, he was controlling this game from the number 10 jersey, but that combination between him and Willie just didn't quite gel throughout this matchup. We also did see Salman Mura, unfortunately, have quite a few errors across this match too. He had a couple handling problems. He also gave away a penalty or two. And then Thomas du Toit getting subbed off for Oxenschat after only around 29 minutes. So that is a statement sub from Rassie Erasmus. He's saying if you're not going to perform, you're not going to be on the field. And it did make a difference to that front row. Oxenschat doing much better in terms of those scrums. But yeah, Thomas du Toit, his confidence is going to be at an all-time low. Hopefully they'll be able to build him back up in that regard as well. Off the bench, we saw a few debutants, Kobus Vesa, Klaba Kanye, as well as Ethan Hooker. I wouldn't say any of them went absolutely crazy in this game, unlike Jesper Vesa, but they all had little moments where I do think if they were given more game time, we may have seen that little bit more. So hopefully the game up against Georgia is the perfect opportunity to give them a crack. In terms of this Italian side, there were a few players who I thought stepped up. Tommaso Mononcello in that number 13 jersey, he did get quite a few crucial turnovers in the breakdown. And I mean crucial as in moments in the game where South Africa were going to continue their attack, not so much game-changing moments that resulted in scoring for the Italians. But he probably got, I'd say, 2 or 3 throughout the matchup. We saw quite a lot from Zuliani in that number 7 jersey. Niccolò Canoni, you could see how much he wanted this game to go better. He was passionate during the national anthem. He was fired up out there on the field. But Italy just gave away far too many penalties to be competitive in this matchup. You have to have perfect discipline when you're playing the box. Definitely when you come in as underdogs. They didn't do too badly in match number 1. But test match number 2, it definitely slipped through the fingertips of this Italian side. And you've got South Africa who, even when they were having handling errors early on in the match, similar to test match number 1, they just still were the better side out there on the field. So they will be playing Georgia next week. That will be an intriguing one to see who Rassie will be selecting. We will be doing a video on the channel tomorrow trying to predict that side, which is going to be near on impossible with the amount of changes that could happen heading into that match. One person I'm not predicting in my team though, Jesper Vesa, sadly. Due to that suspension, he will be out for more than just that one game and likely quite a few after that as well. Nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for tuning into this review. Do let me know what you thought of this contest. Do you feel South Africa will be happy with that 45-0? And isn't that a crazy statement to make? 45 points more than an opposition, but there's still a little bit of questioning of whether they could have done more had they not got a card, had they tried a couple new things, maybe switched a couple players around. Could this have been even higher scoring for the South Africans? The Italians, of course, they would have liked to do quite a few things differently throughout the match. They do not have any more games in July, so that is them done and dusted. And now they have to wait for those July, and now they have to wait for those November internationals, where they will have some pretty tough opposition just around the corner. They will be playing up against the Australians. They will be playing at South Africa again, and then they will have Samoa as that last game on the 23rd or 22nd, depending on where you are in the world of November. For South Africa, while we are at it, we might as well look at their November internationals. Of course, they also have a rugby championship around the corner too, but they have got their match up against France in the early stages of November. Then they play the Italians, then Ireland, and then Wales to close out their 2025 international season. But thank you all very much for tuning in. I am rambling once again, but thank you all very much for being here all throughout the weekend and also on that live stream too. And I will see you all for the next one.